Hey guys, oops. This is Roy with Roy's Funny Stories. I'm going to tell you a story about the night that we ran from the cops on our motorcycles. So one night, Dale and I were about 16. We were going down Antioch Road about 1:30 in the morning on our motorcycles at about 90 miles an hour, 85, 90. When you're 16, you'll do these kind of things. Dale had his brother Tim on the back of the motorcycle with him that night. I was in front of him because, he had an extra weight on there. So we were hauling. We were going pretty fast. And if you all are familiar with that area, Antioch Road, it comes up towards the Whitechapel Cemetery. Back then, the road in front of Walmart wasn't there, so you couldn't go all the way to, there was no 152 at that time. It was just Berry Road, a two-lane blacktop road. But what this road did was, as it got past that McDonald's there on the right, it made a long sweeping right-hand turn alongside the cemetery. And then you went around the cemetery and all the way down. Well, there's a roundabout up there now, but you took that road all the way north to Berry Road. That's how you got to Berry Road. So anyway, we came by that McDonald's 85 or 90 miles an hour, and there was a cop there. I saw him. It was too late. Went by him. And, my dad had always told me that if you go to jail, you're going to stay there. I'm not going to come and get you. If there's a fine, it'll be served in jail time. There's no bail. That doesn't happen. You're going to serve it right there where you are. And he wasn't kidding. When my dad said something, he meant it. It was no joke. So I figured to myself, I said, well, 85, 90 miles an hour, 1:30 in the morning on Antioch Road, 35 miles an hour, or 30 mile an hour, whatever it was, I'm probably going to go to jail. So I quickly, my 16-year-old mind decided, let's just run. So I slowed down enough to make that right-hand turn, barely, that long sweeping right-hand turn. And now I'm heading east. And I hit my brakes and I made the very first right-hand turn, or the next right-hand. There's another right-hand turn there now, but it wasn't there then. But anyway, I turned right on Indiana. And I was going so fast that I started on the inside, and my mufflers and my motorcycle were dragging, sparks were shooting off of it. And I barely made the turn without going in the yard of that house on the corner. And then I took off down Indiana, and I turned right, and I think it was the very first right-hand turn. It turned out to be a cul-de-sac. I tear down that cul-de-sac, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I got my headlights off, because in older motorcycles in the 60s, you could turn your motorcycle headlights off. Today, they're on all the time. So, like cars, So I turned the headlights off, and I come around the cul-de-sac, oh my gosh. And there was a Winnebago parked in the driveway. There was a two-car driveway on the south side of that cul-de-sac. And they had a Winnebago parked there, and there's a big evergreen tree there. Evergreen bush, kind of really. It was almost touching the ground, this thing. This big old bush. And the motorhome was rubbing up against the branches. And I thought, quick, man, I just drove my motorcycle right into that bush, right up against the motorhome and right in there till the branches folded in behind me. I folded my mirrors down. I held my hand over my taillight so it didn't reflect light. And the cop here he comes, woo, 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 down that cul-de-sac, and he spins around that cul-de-sac. He hesitates for a second. He goes ripping back out of the cul-de-sac. What happened was he had caught Dale on Indiana. Or I'm not sure if Dale even got to Indiana. He may have still been on the road by the cemetery. And he stopped him there. And he was going back to make sure Dale didn't take off. Now, I would have taken off. If the cop went by me, boom, I'm out of there. But, Dale's a law-abiding, honest citizen running around with a maniac. I say that for you, Dale. And anyway, I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, man, So all of a sudden, every light in the cul-de-sac, the porch lights, house lights, boom, dogs are barking. I can hear people hollering. I'm like, oh, I got to get out of here. So I started my motorcycle up and I forced myself through those bushes. And then luckily they didn't have a fence in their backyard. And I tore off through their backyard, and there's a huge field there. It's still there to this day. The Indiana goes like this. The cul-de-sac is over here. like that, and then the field is on back in there to the south. Big field all the way up to that road down there, probably 2 blocks away. So I'm cooking across that field. I mean, I'm flying. I'm rocking across that field as fast as you can go on a street bike on a grassy field. So I'm rocking across that field, and I got my headlights off, and I'm trying to get away. My motorcycle was loud, so you could hear the pipes. Next thing I know, I'm airborne. I mean, I'm just in the air. I'm like, oh, bam, there was a creek out there. I didn't even see it. The creek ran sort of, where I went in, it was running sort of southeast, and then it made a turn to the south. It went on down to that road. There was a bridge down there on that road 2 blocks away to the south. And I flew through the air, and I landed in the bank on the other side, and I blap, in the mud, and splattered in the mud. And luckily it was muddy. It might have killed me. And I'm laying there, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I realized, well, I'm below ground level here, like it was probably, it was every bit of 6 foot tall, this area, maybe even more than that. So I'm down in there, and I smeared mud on my bike. I mean, I'm thinking, I smeared mud on everything that was reflective. Not as if not enough mud got splashed on it when I crashed in there. And I'm laying there in the mud, and I'm waiting, and man, I hear more cops. I can hear the sirens. I can see lights flashing. I can see spotlights going. It was like an army movie with spotlights going out across the field. They're trying to find me out there. And I'm laying down in that mud. I can see the lights like whoosh, whoosh, across the top. I'm like, oh man, this is not good. And it was just a miracle that where I crashed, they couldn't get a straight line of sight. So if I had crashed in the part of the creek that went south, they could have gotten on that bridge and seen me. And, and because the creek mirrored the road sort of, there was always houses, between and where I was, you really couldn't see me that well at all. If they'd have gotten out and come looking for me, they had walked in there, they'd have found me, probably would have followed my tracks through the grass. But they weren't that desperate to find. I mean, it's not like I'm a hardened criminal or anything. I didn't rob a bank or anything. So, so they eventually they went away. And if they'd had a helicopter, of course, Gladstone didn't have no helicopters back then. It wasn't that kind of thing. So anyway, I'm there like 35 minutes, probably 40 minutes maybe. And I'm like, well, I've got to stay here long enough to where I think that the cops have lost interest, or, maybe I can, work out something. So after about that span, about 45 minutes or so, I start trying to push my motorcycle out. I can't get it out. It's muddy. It's a deep, steep bank there. I mean, I can't get it out. And I start it up, and I'm trying to push it. It's just sinking. So I'm like, oh man, So I left my helmet there with my bike, and I got down in that creek, and I walked down the creek all the way to the road up there, came up the road, onto the road. And as it turns out, Dale's family at the time lived about 1.5 miles, maybe a mile from where I was in the ditch there in that creek. And they lived up, excuse me, oh, I'm boring myself. They lived up there off of Vivian, to the east of Antioch Shopping Center. There was a bunch of little kind of cracker box size homes, little square homes. I think they were built like in the 50s when the Korean War guys came back from the war, and they had a bunch of homes through there. And I think there's a grocery store there, and their house was behind that grocery store on Vivian. There's a little strip mall there. But anyway, I thought, well, I'll go there, and I'll try to get some help. So I'm walking down the road, and every time I saw a car, I'd dive in the ditch. And I'd see a car, I'd dive in the ditch. I mean, because if it's a cop, he sees a kid covered in mud, he's going to ask me, what are you doing out here? 2:30, 2:15. What are you doing? I couldn't explain it. What am I going to do? Luckily, I left my helmet back there. It would have been, why you got a helmet? I don't know. I just carry one, So anyway, so I'm diving. I get to the house. I knock on the door. Bam, bam, bam. I don't remember who came to the door. I think it might have been Dale's dad, or probably his dad. And then Tim comes to the door. And Tim was on Dale's motorcycle with him that night, his brother, Tim. And Tim goes, oh man, did you get away? I said, well, sort of. I wrecked my motorcycle. He goes, oh my gosh, man. They pulled us over. I said, I know. And they didn't take him to jail, though. That's, whatever. I wasn't going to get stopped. So I go, Tim, my motorcycle's in the ditch down here. I got to get it out of the ditch. It's stuck. He didn't have a car, so we'll just walk down there. That's what you did for friends, You just went out and did, you do those things. So Tim goes, okay. So he gets himself together, gets his clothes on, and then down the road we go. Diving in the ditch whenever cars are coming. Diving in the ditch whenever cars are coming. And we get down there to the motorcycle. We start dragging it out, dragging it sideways through the mud and the muck. It was terrible. And we started it up and we're trying to push it up. And we finally got it up on top in the field. And I said, get on, Tim. I stuck my muddy helmet on. I said, get on. So we took off. And I took off to his house, dropped him off. Okay, now I got to get home. I lived at 87th and North Oak, and here I'm all the way out here in Vivian over by Antioch. So I go down Vivian Road, and I'm rolling down Vivian Road. And I got up to Vivian and North Oak, I think it was. And down the hill, I could see a cop pulling over a motorcycle. I'm like, oh my gosh. Because I know they're going to pull over every motorcycle they see and question them. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So I go past there and I go down, I get on the highway on 169 North. And I'm booking down 169 North. And I just know any minute, I'm going to come up, there's a cop's going to pull me over and ask me why my bike's covered in mud and where have I been. So I go down and I can't go home because I'm covered in mud. So I went to the driving range at 95th and North Oak. And Dale was staying there tonight. And I said, I banged on the door and Dale comes over and goes, oh my gosh. I said, I got away, dude, but I'm covered in mud and I got to go home. I said, can I borrow some clothes? He goes, yeah. So he gives me some jeans and a shirt. And I tell him the story real quick. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning now. I get myself on my motorcycle and I go home. And when I used to sneak home at night, I used to come down North Oak heading south there. And I would come over the crest of that hill. And then I would turn the motorcycle off and let it roll down North Oak down to 87th Street. And I would just roll right in the driveway and right on down. And that's what I did that night. And I snuck in the house. Went upstairs and snuck in somehow. My parents didn't hear me. They may have, I don't know. We always act like they don't hear us, but sometimes they do. So I went to sleep. And then the next morning, fairly early, my dad comes yelling, what's wrong with your motorcycles covered in mud? Get down there. What you been doing? I said, well, I got in some mud last night. He goes, go clean that thing up. It's a filthy mess. So I went down and cleaned my motorcycle up. And for a month, I just knew the cops were going to come to the house anytime. I thought, I'm done for. Anytime they're going to come get me. I figured they got my license plate. They know who I am. They're going to come get me. So for a month, I didn't go to Gladstone. I mean, I'd go wherever I had to go to not go to Gladstone. So that's a story of my motorcycle chase that I did back in the 70s when I was a kid. Not recommended. I was a little bit of a maniac, but it's what we did. Hope you enjoyed the story. Everybody take care of yourselves during this difficult time. I hope this helps to kind of break it a little bit for you and make you feel a little bit better just for a moment. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.